Today we begin statement 6 of chapter 3. Statement 6 of chapter 3 says, for all transgressions, the motivation is principle. This we already looked at. Yes, this we already looked at. 3.7 rather. For 3.7, it is mainly the three non-virtues of the mind that one must abandon. 3.7. So this particular statement is apparently uttered, said by Jigten Sumgun, in response to people who have this opinion that as far as the pratimoksha, meaning the individual liberation vows, as far as those vows are concerned, they mainly deal with actions of verbal actions and physical actions. So there's this idea, and you can still read today, in many other Dharma texts where they say, the individual liberation vows, the Vinaya vows, the vows of the monks and the nuns, and they are concerned with actions of the body and verbal actions, and not really that concerned about mental actions. So it's in that context that Kyoba Rinpoche says, no, mainly the three non-virtuous states of mind is what is to be abandoned. And that in fact, right, all the physical and the verbal do's and don'ts that you find in whether the 5 lay vows, right? The 5 lay vows, 4 of them are physical that you don't do, and 1 of them is verbal that you don't do. And then in the individual liberation vows of the novices, a lot of physical you don't do, a lot of verbal, more clearly defined. And the complete vows of the fully ordained, even more detailed, all the types of speech, all the types of physical actions you should not get involved in. But this has led, some people to say, oh, yes, and therefore kind of belittle individual liberation vows and say, oh, yeah, that's just, about the body and about body and speech. And then some of these people think, oh, but then we practice the mind, so we don't need to pay attention to body and speech. Sometimes you see this, among Dharma communities. People kind of get carried away by, I'm just practicing the mind teachings. And then in their physical action and their verbal actions, they're causing harm left and right, up and down. Harm to themselves, harm to others. So Kyoba Jigten Sumgun here says, mainly what must be abandoned are the 3 poisons, the 3 non-virtues. In the Vinaya, in the individual liberation vows, that there is a direct connection between what the mind is feeding and what the body and speech is doing. That all these rules given in relation to body and speech, they are ultimately to remove the mental defilements. And there is no real effective removal of the mental defilements if body and speech are not brought in line. So body, speech, and mind in that way is inseparable. So observing the pratimoksha vows, observing the Vinaya vows, is not a mindless observation of only paying attention to your physical, paying attention to the verbal, and then doesn't matter what your mind is. Oh, I don't kill, but then in my mind, like I'm like wanting to murder everyone, wanting to beat everyone, wanting to torture everyone. Oh, doesn't matter because, physically I'm not killing. Then that's fine. No, that's not even keeping the Vinaya vows. Because the whole point of all the physical and verbal proscription is to bring in line in a more harmonious way when our minds are free from mental defilements. Yeah? So Khenpo Kunpal's commentary, for this reason, concerning what is to be abandoned, it is also covetousness, which is one of the three three that pertains. Here, remember the 10 non-virtues. Yeah? Last three, the first one is called covetousness, which is desire. And also to be abandoned are harmful intention, which is aversion. And finally, what is to be abandoned is wrong view, which is delusion. So Khenpo Kunpal here associates the last three of the 10 non-virtues, covetousness, harmful intention, and wrong view. He connects this directly to, of course, desire, aversion, attachment, aversion, and delusion. And that is to say, the three non-virtues of the mind, and one must mainly abandon. It is told in the divisions of the Vinaya that the Buddha said to Bhadraka and Sundarananda, when I teach you a dharma of completely liberating the mind and the discriminative wisdom in order to separate you from desire for desire, to separate you from desire for desire, desire for aversion, and desire for delusion. Maybe desire here, you could say like inclinations, for desire, inclination to be attracted to aversion, inclination to be attracted to delusion. So here, again, the quote, when I teach you a dharma of completely liberating the mind and discriminative wisdom in order to separate you from these inclinations that go towards desire, that goes towards aversion, that goes towards delusion, why do you perform such unsuitable activities? In other words, as I give you these teachings on how to tame the mind, as you're working on that, how can you engage in unsuitable activities of the mouth and of the body? You cannot. These all have to be brought in line together, harmoniously. And it is said in the Sutra of Individual Liberation, for the wild horse of the mind, the fitting bridle with 100 sharp spikes is this individual liberation vows. And so this quote is a little scary for us. Very tough. It says, for the wild horse of the mind, you put a bridle with 100 sharp spikes, using pain to control this horse. Maybe too strong, this quote. Appropriate for some, maybe for us, like, oh man, there's a lot of violence. Here, it's, of course, don't literally do that. Even don't metaphorically do that. But understand that, it's not an easy task. So yes, we need to learn how to be kind to ourselves, but also we cannot indulge ourselves not because there's anything bad about indulgement, except that when our mind is wrapped up in indulgement, it lacks clarity, and then in the state of lacking clarity, of course, the habit is to create suffering. So be watchful over that. 3.8. With the causes of losing the vows, it also happens that they are not lost. So this is the beginning of these two lines. Well, all of this, starting from 3.6, 3.7, 3.8, 3.9, they're all about issues surrounding, the loss of these vows, of these individual liberation vows, how it might break. Starting with 3.5, really, right? The overall point, these vows are imperceptible form, and so just like any form, they are liable to be broken. But when you take these statements all together, you'll see that there are important nuances. So if 3.4 is, if 3.5, right, is warning us or reminding us, we should treat our vows like they are like a china vase, very expensive pottery that it could be broken, right? So 3.5 emphasizing that. 3.8 says, even when the causes for losing the vows are there, when you do something negative, it is also possible that the vows are not lost. In a way, you could say, well, that seems to contradict 3.5 by saying, vows are like a precious ceramic object or glass object that if you are not careful, you bump on it, it will break. 3.8 seems to say, but not always. But not always. So why? So let's look at the commentary, which is fairly long. Furthermore, concerning the vows of individual liberation, it is said in the Vinaya scriptures that there are 4 causes for losing the vows. So the vows are no longer there with you. You no longer have them in these 4 scenarios. 1, changing gender 3 times. Very interesting. 3 times. 1 time, it's okay. But 3 times. This has to do with, there were numerous stories in the Buddha's time of people taking vows, but then not through surgery, okay? Somehow. Here, gender is a modern translation. Quite literally, the text is talking about, in fact, physiologically, like the sexual organs change, So it's kind of peculiar. We don't quite understand, It's framed in magical terms. And so if it changes the first time and change back, that's counted as 1 time. Then you still have your monk's vows. In other words, what this is saying is basically, if you took the monk's vows and then in the long run you have become a woman, then those monk's vows you don't have anymore. So you have to take the nun's vows. Or if you're a nun, right? And then 3 times, to me, 3 times basically means no more going back and forth, like it's fixed now. And it's fixed opposite from those vows that you took. You took the monk's vows and now you're a woman. You took the nun's vows and now you're a man. Right? And so here, this is general teachings, not Jigten Sunban yet. So if you change 3 times, then you have lost the vows that you took. I guess you could say, right, your comprehensive coverage is no longer applicable. This is not pre-existing conditions, this is post-existing conditions. So now you have to repurchase your insurance, for different coverage. You keep it's sort of like saying, if you move your house, you move out of this, you bought your insurance for this house, you move out of this house, you move across the street one time, the insurance company says it's okay, you're still insured, but then you move back, and you tell them, well, I move back to my original house. Okay, one time, two times, and three times. You're like, no, no, no. Okay, you have already moved over there. Then, taking full ordination before turning 20 years of age, and later realizing, still before turning 20, that you cannot do that. And so there are cases where, so this is a procedural issue. No one younger than the age of 20 can take the complete vows. In our way of counting, is 19. The Asian way, when it says 20, is 1 year in the womb. Well, not literally 1 year, but 1 year in the womb, and then plus 9 years. So in our counting, it's 19. So it says, if you suddenly discovered, like, oh wait, actually I'm not 20 yet, right? I'm not 19 yet when I took these vows. I was actually only 17. Then at that point, you are not bound. You don't have that full coverage, so to say. And there were cases like that, and of course those cases are actually quite common. Until recently, many people still, don't have an exact record of like what year they were born. 3, decline of the sacred Vinaya Dharma teachings. And 4, occurrence of a root transgression. So these are the 4. Decline of the sacred Vinaya Dharma teachings means that those teachings for guiding people how to observe these vows no longer have disappeared. An occurrence of root transgression is then the most obvious one, meaning you created these 4, they call them the 4 root transgressions. Like having sexual intercourse with someone, killing someone, stealing from your own monastic community, and then claiming to have supernatural powers. These are called the 4 root transgressions. If you create any of these 4, then you have automatically lost your vows, according to the common tradition. These are the 4 conditions. The 4th one is the most obvious one, meaning you yourself have done something to completely invalidate it, so to say, your insurance policy. It is said in the treasury of Abhidharma, by giving up the training, dying, becoming a hermaphrodite, severing the basic virtue, or passing beyond the night for the 24-hour vows, the Vinaya of individual liberation is lost. And so the Abhidharma Kosha talks about the various ways in which those vows are no longer there. Giving up the training, you say, no, I don't want it anymore. I reject this. Then you die. Becoming a hermaphrodite. Again, there seems to have been like cases of that. So now it's unclear which set of vows. So anyway, these 5 causes plus the above 4 total 9. However, with these 9 causes for losing the vows that are taught, it also happens that the vows are not lost. Concerning the giving back of the vows but not losing them, So this is called giving up the training. So there is a procedure where you could go and to your preceptor, to the one who gave you the vows, and say, I'm returning my vows. So Khenpo Kunpal here says, there are, he says, examples of where, concerning the giving back of the vows, but still not losing them, four possibilities are actually shown in the divisions of the Vinaya text. One, giving back the vows, but not damaging them. So they've not been broken. They're intact, but you've given them back. Damaging them, but not giving them back. You have damaged them, but you have not renounced them. Neither giving them back nor damaging them. Both giving them back and damaging them. With the exception of the fourth possibility, it also happens for the others that the vows are not lost. So here in these four scenarios, the first three scenarios, the vows are not lost yet. Only in the fourth, you gave them back, you have damaged them, and you give them back. In addition, it happens that those with sharp faculties do not lose the vows when they die due to the power of their previous habituation. The point here, Kyopa's point, and this is of course Khenpo Kunpal's commentary, but Kyopa's point here appears to be, also don't think that you can accidentally or so easily lose the vows. So this to me, is actually a very nice, on the one hand saying, this is like a broken, this is like a vase, a ceramic, a piece of glass artwork that's fragile. Don't be careless. It's fragile. But on the other hand, also saying, even when someone has, say, I'm going to give back my vows, but they're intact, I've not broken them. But that person has not completely lost their vows yet. In other words, if they still want to turn back, it's possible. Yeah, of course, if they're giving back their vows intact, right, and they still have them, but then they go on to break them, right, then of course, those vows are lost. Here is really talking about individuals who, for whatever reason, they feel like they cannot continue to keep these vows, and then they give them back, but they have not broken them. Insofar as the power of having received those vows, that power is still there. And if they want to come back under the protection of that power, they do not need to retake the vows, which is not easy, the vow taking ceremony. Yeah. Then likewise, damaging them but not giving them back. So this is really interesting. This, I think, others will say, oh, how can if you're someone, a monk or a nun, you have damaged the vows, even if you have not given them back, you're gone, the vow is gone. Here, Jigten Sungren says, now, actually, if that person has damaged the vows, but then they're not giving it back because they have regret and they see the preciousness of continuing to keep the vows, then those vows are not gone. That protection is not gone. So this one might be a little controversial to others, because others might insist, like, no, you have to retake because you have broken. It might seem like rather indulgent, very permissive. So then some monastics might think, it's okay, I never give them back, so I still have them. And some people, it's true, because of societal pressure, even then when they have broken all the vows left, right, up and down secretly or not so secretly to save face. They're not going to formally give them back. That's a very different motivation, of not giving them back. I don't know how Jigten Sunggun would exactly respond to that situation, but I have a suspicion, if that was the situation, then he might probably say, well, in that case, I don't know, maybe you don't have those vows anymore, if you're doing it, if you're not giving them back because you don't want society to criticize you, or you don't want people to finally know, oh, actually, you have already given up on the training. Yeah. It is like it is taught in the narratives about the seat and so forth. 241 doesn't tell us what it is. Oh, it does. Yes. A fully ordained monk was practicing meditation on his seat, got sleepy, and then to wash himself. He did not see that a poisonous snake had gone under his seat meanwhile, and when he sat on it again, the snake bit him. He died. And when he was reborn as a god in the realm of the 33, he did not have desire for the sense pleasure of the gods, and his recollection of being fully ordained monk was not damaged. So that is the example of like the last point. Someone with very sharp faculties, meaning someone with a very developed mind already, even when they die, they don't lose those vows. Because the imprint, their mind is so strongly established as the fact that they are a monk. So even with death, they still, even when reborn in the heaven of 33, where there is said to be countless pleasures for you to enjoy, he had no interest in that. This is almost similar to, I remember the Dalai Lama saying, he said, somebody asked him quite a number of years back, he was maybe in the 60s or 70s, and they asked him, like, what kind of attainments, what kind of achievements can you tell us you feel you have achieved after all these years? Of course, these people are probably reading about all the stages of meditation and the stages of bodhisattvas or whatever, and he laughed and he said, well, I don't know any stages that I have attained. He said, but one thing I can tell you now is, he says, now, even in my dreams, I don't forget that I'm a monk. And then very honestly, he kind of joked, he kind of let on a little bit what he meant. He said, sometimes in dreams you see certain things, and then his laugh, ha 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 ha. And then, I think he's kind of hinting, like, right, you see in his, like he sees a beautiful woman or whatever, and then he laughed, ha ha. I said, but then now in my dreams, I catch myself saying, hey, you're a monk. And then he says, then it stops there. So it's that kind of powerful imprint. And it is, for example, like it is taught by Asanga and his brother, that even when the sacred Vinaya Dharma teachings decline, except for the lack of the possibility to take new vows, the vows that are already taken are not lost. So that's the other scenario, right? The scenario of the sacred Dharma teachings have declined, of the Vinaya teachings have declined. It says, well, yeah, maybe it has declined, but then if you already have them, the power doesn't go away. Unless you have them, you gave them back, you rejected them, you broke all of them, and then now you need to retake, but then that possibility is no longer there. So here, this issue of the possibility is no longer there, right? This is how, in another context, is impacting that issue about the fully ordained nuns. So I think it's important for us to understand that the issue of the fully ordained nuns, some of those rules, it wasn't, really in good faith, it wasn't created to impede women from getting the vows. It's just certain good reasons that existed to address a certain set of issues. has broader implications, unintentional, that people have to grapple with later on. Just like the issue of the quorum is not to make things difficult, but that Vinaya matters is not matter of an individual. In other words, it won't be arbitrary. So if you actually follow the Vinaya rules, which unfortunately I think most monasteries don't follow, and what I'm referring to is the abbot does not decide whether someone should leave the community, stay in the community, be under probation, or anything like that. The community of 10 years and above monks or nuns in that community collectively make that decision. That's the quorum. So it takes arbitrariness out of the hands of like one or two charismatic leader or terrorizing leaders. It says a quorum needs to be called. So if you want to change anything in the community, if you want to expel someone, the abbot by himself, the abbess by herself cannot do that. A quorum needs to be called. So that's the quorum thing. Now then the quorum will have implications, In not having quorum, then you cannot have a formal Vinaya matter decided. Likewise here, it says, except for the lack of the possibility to take new vows, meaning the system of giving the vows have declined so much. So anyways, here, coming back here, the vows that are taken are not lost. And then in particular, Jigten Sumgun holds the Vinaya to be the great vehicle. And due to this, he explains that one does not lose the vows by dying. Here is an interesting point and, perhaps controversial for others. Jigten Sumgun actually says, the monks' vows and nuns' vows, once you have taken them, even when you die, they don't go away. Why do they not go away? Because the power of your Mahayana motivation of until enlightenment is achieved. So that Bodhisattva vow transformed the individual liberation vows into a great vehicle practice. And great vehicle practice, the motivation is not just this life and not just next life, but from this life until Buddhahood is achieved. So the power of the vows will continue for these individuals. The protection of those vows will continue. So today we will stop here. It's Friday.